Two teams moving in very opposite directions, meeting in London on Sunday. The Broncos, perhaps coming off the biggest win any NFL team has had in the 2025 season. The Jets just looking for their first win. We're breaking down Week 6 action in London on today's Locked On NFL crossover.
You are Locked On NFL crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome in, Jets fans and Broncos fans. I'm John Butchko, the host of Locked On Jets, alongside Sayer Bedinger, the co-host of Locked On Broncos. We're here to get you ready for Week 6 action in London when the Jets take on the Denver Broncos Sunday morning. On today's show, we're going to talk about the key matchups. We're going to talk about keys to victory. We'll talk about the big stories around each of these teams. But before we get to that, you should know Crossover Thursday is presented by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Well, Sayer, great to be with you as always. In a matchup that is almost like half a divisional game at this point. These teams play every year. This is the 8th time in the last 9 years the Jets and Broncos have played a game.
That's crazy to me. I feel like you and I are kind of just honorary co-hosts at this point. I think we make some kind of jokes about that every year when these two teams play, but it's also funny how these teams continue to stay so connected, right? Because before it was the Nathaniel Hackett connection and, the Aaron Rodgers drama with Denver. And now you guys have a GM who spent a long time with the Denver Broncos organization, was there with John Elway. He was there with George Payton. I mean, he's been there for a long time, and now he's leading you guys. And then, of course, the connection with Aaron Glenn and Sean Payton. It's really interesting, the ties that bind between these two teams.
Thank you for not mentioning Tebow. We Jets fans appreciate that.
Yes. Broncos fans would have loved to have kept Tebow at that point. Like, they couldn't coexist with Peyton Manning or what? I mean, I don't understand that. Put him out there for some gimmick plays. That would have made 2012 even more fun than it was. But you know what? Yeah, those are the days, man. That was over 10, 12 years ago at this point. My goodness.
Time flies. So Sayer, let's talk about the current Denver Broncos, who, of course, are coming off a great win over the Philadelphia Eagles. As I said, as we opened this show, that may have been the best win any NFL team has had all season. So talk a little bit more about what's going on in Denver these days.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest storyline, is not only getting that win, but how do you build off of that? Or how do you not let that? Somebody asked a great question to Sean Payton in his first media availability of the week on Wednesday. And they were asking, like, of course, coming off of a loss, it's clear that you're motivated. You have a chip on your shoulder. You want to prove that, hey, we shouldn't have lost that game. Or, yeah, we understand we blew late in that game. We blew it. But when you're coming off of a big win like this is another bit of uncharted territory for this Denver Broncos team, because they have failed against the Kansas City Chiefs when they had all their starters out there. Even though it was blocked field goal, you still failed to seal the deal. Then you got blown out by Baltimore in Baltimore last year. You got blown out by the Bills in Buffalo last year. The storyline is you can't close one-score games. You can't win against great teams. Well, now you've done that. So how do you follow it up? That's going to be another test mentally, I think, for this team, and the biggest story going into this game.
Yeah, and from the Jets side, we're almost entering this from an opposite angle, where this is a team that's 0-5, and it's a team that's not been a particularly competitive 0-5. They played a really good game on offense week 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ever since then, they've been beaten pretty soundly by the following 4 opponents. I mean, they did lose to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on a last-second field goal, but they were down 20 in that game in the fourth quarter. And, I think heading into the season, expectations were low. Nobody thought this was a playoff team. Nobody really thought this was going to be a team with a winning record. Everybody knew this was going to be year 1 of a reset, first-year head coach, first-year GM. I don't think anybody anticipated how difficult this would be, though. This is a team that really has not shown a lot on either side of the ball since that week 1 loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And before we started recording, I said something to Sayer that if you go back a year, the Jets played the Broncos week 4, and that heading into that game was probably the high water mark of the Aaron Rodgers era in New York, because the Jets were 2-1, and the fact the Jets being 2-1 was the high water mark of the Aaron Rodgers era. Says a lot about the Aaron Rodgers era. But the Jets season kind of unraveled in this 2-week stretch that followed. They lose to the Broncos to fall to 2-2. Then the next week they go to London. They lose to the Minnesota Vikings. The owner kind of panics. He fires the coach. The season then goes completely off the rails. And there's some degree of symmetry here because a year ago it was Denver and it was London that threw the Jets season off course. So I think for the Jets, the hope is that maybe the Broncos in London could be the thing that turns things around in a more positive direction this year.
Right. And I think that when you look at some of these different things that have gone on in recent weeks, including the Eagles losing this past week, or I guess every undefeated team now being wiped off the board after both the Bills and the Eagles losses, you kind of just wonder at some point, like when are they just due, right? You're due for a win. You're 0 for 5 so far to start the season. So at some point, I mean, we've seen a winless team in the NFL before, but we don't think the Jets or anybody else is going to be winless anytime soon again. So like at some point, when is that win going to happen? And like, why not this week? That's kind of what I think Broncos country is approaching this sort of, okay, we want to have high expectations now that we've beat the Eagles, but you've got to come back out and prove that you can beat a team that you should beat, because ultimately everybody's like, well, is this a trap game? Is this a game that, hey, the Jets are just due, or they're going to, they don't have any turnovers that they've forced so far this season. So is this going to be the week that it just comes in bunches? Like, that's what the Broncos want to try to avoid, is being the streak stopper in a number of different ways for this Jets team.
Yeah, the Jets optimist in me, and that's one of the most dangerous phrases in the English language, the Jets optimist in me, because whenever there's Jets optimism, it's typically not justified. But the Jets optimist in me sees a couple of potential equalizers in this game. I think whenever the teams are traveling across the Atlantic to London, there's always a bit of uncertainty of how the teams are going to react to that trip. So that could be an equalizer. And then it is the classic question, is it a trap game? Is it a letdown game? The Broncos had such a huge win over the Eagles. The Jets have looked lost this year. The Jets are not a team that has looked very competitive. And, is there perhaps a tendency to kind of look past the Jets right now? I'm not sure I believe that. I'll be honest with you, the way the Jets have played this year, I'm not sure it even matters, because the Jets have essentially gotten to a point. I said this on my show on Monday, and I wasn't joking. It sounds like I'm trying to be like make some like joke. The most surprising play of the game against Dallas for me was this third down play where the Jets forced a dump off like 10 yards short of the sticks. And I was surprised when the Jets didn't miss 5 tackles and allowed the Cowboys to convert, because it's been that kind of season where it's like, even when the Jets are in a great position down in distance, something bad's going to happen. Someone's going to commit a penalty. Someone's going to miss a tackle. I don't know if the Jets are capable of playing a good game right now, but any given Sunday, I mean, look, I've covered a lot of bad Jets teams through the years, and I've seen situations where maybe the opponent looks past them. And in the NFL, it is a league where, any team can in theory beat any other team on any given Sunday. But I think that's all you can really hope for right now from a Jets perspective.
Yeah, and that's the fear from the Broncos perspective, or from the fans anyway, is that, hey, any given Sunday, I think that right now you've proven that you can beat a top tier team finally after all this time. And now what everybody's kind of worried about is the pressure of being a good team, and how much of that actually weighs on this young roster, because ultimately it is a lot of young players on this team. So the Broncos, they're going to be leaning heavily on, of course, the young leaders on the team, but also these veterans like Talanoa Hufanga, Mike McGlinchey, these guys who have actually been to the pinnacle before, and saying, hey, your experience in these situations. They're going to be leaning heavily on Sean Payton and his experience in the situations to be able to coach them through a time where, okay, the expectation is that you're supposed to go out and beat this team by, what's the line, 7 points right now, right? From our friends over there at FanDuel. So you're expected to win by 7. It's not that you have to meet everybody's expectations, but you do have to prove that you are a great team now. And you have to win these games where you've already dropped 2 AFC matchups already this season to the Colts and the Chargers. You can't really afford to lose any of the quote unquote gimme games that you get on your schedule. And Sean Payton said it. He's like, there's no Division I AA teams that you get to play after you play a powerhouse, right? You're going up against guys that get paid to play every single week. And the Jets have personnel that, man, Breece Hall has killed the Broncos in the past. I mean, this Jets interior pass rush has been a problem. We saw a defensive battle between these two teams. And last year, Only reason the Jets lost is because of a missed field goal. So how do you really take the bull by the horns in this sort of a game and prove like we are this team that is as good as people are saying we are?
All right. Well, Sayer and I seem to have a consensus here. Denver is the favorite in this game. A lot of this will come down to how they respond to being the favorite. But ahead here on our crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Jets and Locked On Broncos, we're going to look at some of the key matchups that will decide this game. I have one returning Jet in particular who could make a big difference. Stay tuned for more key matchups ahead on our Locked On crossover show. Our Locked On crossover today is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Well, Mazda brings the same intention to how they craft every model. You can feel the craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to the available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. It's Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm John, the host of Locked On Jets, alongside Sayer, the co-host of Locked On Broncos, getting you ready for Week 6 action. Jets and Broncos playing in London Sunday morning. Matchup that's been pretty frequent. 8th time in the last 9 years these teams are meeting. As I said earlier, maybe like half a divisional game at this point. Sayer, as we look at these two teams that are sort of rivals, what's one matchup you have your eye on?
Yeah, offensively for the Broncos, there's going to be a pretty massive absence on the offensive line. Ben Powers suffered a biceps injury on I guess late in the game against Philadelphia. It wasn't the last play of the game or anything like that, but he did play through a bit of a biceps injury. Sounds like he's going to be out for a couple of months here. So the Broncos, they'll be breaking in a new left guard for this game. And of course, going up against a Jets defensive front that has as much talent as they do, and against a defensive coordinator like Aaron Glenn, who I think you're going to be as aggressive as you possibly can to try and exploit that weakness. It's whoever's going up against the Broncos interior offensive line, because Ben Powers is a quality player, and whoever they replace him with is obviously not going to be as good. So they've got to find a way to keep that floor high on the offensive line. But also center Luke Wattenberg has struggled at times this year, got 5 penalties called on him against the Cincinnati Bengals a couple weeks ago, has had some errant snaps to Bo Nix as well. So how those guys respond to the absence of Ben Powers on the offensive line, I think is going to be crucial going up against that Jets defensive front.
Yeah, Sayer, I think that's a great point. And it's been very frustrating watching this Jets defense this year. Against the Dallas Cowboys, a team that was missing 4 of its 5 starters, they allowed 37 points. This defensive line, it has good players on it. Quinnen Williams, Will McDonald, who had double-digit sacks in his second year last season. But it hasn't really played at the level we've been expecting them. Now, there's not a lot of depth. And one of the issues is that one of their best defensive linemen, Jermaine Johnson, has been out. Jermaine Johnson is traveling with the Jets to England. Indications are he's ready to return from an ankle injury, and Johnson has been injured a lot. Unfortunately, he suffered an Achilles injury week 2 against the Tennessee Titans, so he missed last year's game against Denver. He missed most of last season. It sounds like he's ready to return, though, so I'm keeping an eye on him against Mike McGlinchey. Jets need to generate a pass rush. The secondary has been an issue for this team. Sauce Gardner is not having a vintage Sauce Gardner season. The number 2 corner, Brandon Stevens, who they signed from Baltimore, has not delivered. The safety play has been ugly between Tony Adams and Andre Sisco. In the slot, Michael Carter II is not having a good season. And I think it's a lot to ask for all these guys who are playing poorly in the secondary to step up. So I think we know there are 2 ways you can slow down an opponent's passing attack. One is to cover really well. I don't have a lot of faith in the Jets to do that. The other is make life easier for the guys in the secondary. Get to the quarterback. Jets have not done a great job of that so far this year. I think the addition of Jermaine Johnson could be a focal point. It could be the type of thing that helps breathe some life into the pass rush. So that's why I have an eye on that matchup. What other matchups are you looking at?
Yeah, I think that's a great one. I look at, Jets versus Broncos. We mentioned the ties that bind, right? Of course. And so John Franklin Myers in a sort of another sequel to the revenge, right? Last year, he got his first shot at the Jets. And this year he'll get another shot. This year, though, John is in a contract year with the Denver Broncos, and he's been pretty vocal about wanting to get paid, and not necessarily in a negative way, not in a distracting way, but a couple of off-season posts on Twitter here and there, kind of just making it known that he's ready to get that bag whenever the time comes. This is a great opportunity for him going up against his former team. What Sean Payton said about John Franklin Myers earlier this week is the guy dents the pocket, right? So that space between the quarterback and the center, he said John Franklin Myers consistently is denting that space and making it difficult for quarterbacks to step up. He's getting consistent pressure, and he's just been kind of a steady force, as you know. I mean, he's pretty much posted the same statistical production over the course of his entire career every single year. I mean, the guy is as consistent as it gets. And I think this is a game right here where you really want to see John Franklin Myers step up against his former team, making plays, especially against the run. As we know, Breece Hall has had a lot of success against Denver in his career, averaging over 7 yards a carry. It's going to be important for John Franklin Myers to prove himself as that next big money contract player against his old team.
All right, Jets fans, I like Sayer, so I want to go on a rant about the Jets giving John Franklin Myers away to Denver, but I'm going to be polite. Sayer, I was very upset with that trade when it happened because John Franklin Myers was a really good player for the Jets, and they just gave him away, and I didn't understand it when they did it. And Broncos fans, I'm sure, were very happy that they did because solid locker room guy too. Everybody loved him in New York. So I'll behave. We'll move on. I think that was a good matchup. I think it was a good choice. John Franklin Myers is a good player. I liked him a lot when he was in New York. My second matchup is going to be Nick Bonito versus Olu Fashanu. Jets have two young tackles starting. Armand Lambeau, who was their first-round pick this year on the right side. Olu Fashanu, their first-round pick last year on the left side. And I think that these two young guys both have a lot of potential. I think that there has been a difference in quality so far this season. Lambeau is off to a very good start to his career. I think he's ahead of schedule. He had a rough game last week against Dallas, but overall, I was not expecting him to look this good this fast. He's a guy who I thought was going to have ups and downs this season, but he looks like a credible starter right now, and he has the chance to grow into something better. For Fashanu, it's been a bit of a struggle so far this season. He played well 2 weeks ago against Miami, but other than that, I mean, he has been vulnerable, particularly in pass protection. And part of this is I think they're probably giving Lambeau, the rookie, a little bit more help than they're giving to Fashanu. But this is a player who finished his rookie season pretty strong. Now he missed the last couple of games with an injury, but he was a guy who entered the season with a lot of people feeling good about him. And it hasn't been a disaster. Look, I don't want to make him out to be the worst left tackle in the league, but I think a lot of us were expecting more from him this year. Nick Bonito's, very good edge guy for the Broncos. This is going to be a real test, and Jets have to protect Justin Fields because Justin Fields is a guy who's not a natural pocket passer right now. And last week against the Dallas Cowboys, took a couple bad sacks he should not have taken. Even when Fields is getting good protection, he's not playing great in the pocket. You can't allow early pressure though. So I think that's the matchup I have. And I won't rant about John Franklin Myers. I'll be polite for you and your Broncos audience there.
Yeah, we understand that type of stuff when that goes down. I mean, obviously, you kind of want to go back in time and get a mulligan on those types of trades, obviously. But yeah, the Broncos are happy to have him. But with Nick Bonito, I'm glad you mentioned that matchup too, because those two guys coming off the edge, Bonito and Cooper, have been arguably the best pass rush duo in the NFL. I know Nick Bonito already has 7 sacks so far this season, and he's gunning for Defensive Player of the Year this year. He wants to take that award away from Pat Surtain, his teammate. So he's playing with a major chip on his shoulder. He got the big money contract right before the start of the season. And oftentimes you'll see guys kind of mail it in after that, but with Nick Bonito, it seems like it's added that chip on his shoulder where I always think back to Peyton Manning and the quote that he had after he was drafted by the Colts, and somebody's like, what are you going to do with all that money, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I'm going to go earn it. That's kind of the mentality that we're seeing from Nick Bonito is, what are you going to do now that you've got the big money contract? He's like, I'm going to go out there and win Defensive Player of the Year. And that is what we're seeing from him week after week. He's whooped up on Joe Alt. He whooped up on the Bengals. He whooped up on, obviously, this past weekend in the Broncos win against the Eagles, going up against Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata. I mean, to get 2.5 sacks against those two guys So he's playing kind of possessed at this point. And that is another matchup to circle this week, because if Justin Fields holds onto the ball a little too long, Nick Bonito is going to be coming there. And the Broncos, just like the Jets, defensively, these two teams have struggled to force a lot of turnovers this season. And I know that for the Jets, it's been a little bit more pronounced, but same for the Broncos. Honestly, we expected a lot more than 4 through 5 games. So that's going to be a huge focus, I think, on both sides for this game, is that edge battle for these two teams.
All right, well, you've heard the biggest stories around these two teams. You've heard about the big matchups. Ahead here on our crossover Thursday show, we're going to talk keys to victory, and we may make a prediction or two. That's ahead here on our Locked On NFL crossover. Today's Locked On NFL crossover is brought to you by Gametime. The NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout, it's frustrating. And that's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Gametime is fast, easy, and backed by the Gametime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. Sayer, I told you this before we started recording. I'm going to the game Sunday. I'm going to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. I got my ticket through Gametime. I got a great deal. It was really easy. Again, I knew the price before I checked out. There were no hidden fees, just a couple taps. I'm being serious. This is how I got my ticket, and it's already been delivered to me. There's still plenty of great tickets available for you to check out on Gametime if you're heading out to London, or if you want to see these teams play after they return to the United States. Just download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL, Locked On NFL, one word with no space, for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. Today's Locked On NFL crossover is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss, because right now new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel gives you so many ways to play. You can build parlays, try player props, even follow the live line during games. It makes watching football more exciting when you got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the Gametime experience so much better. And looking ahead to Sunday, Jets and Broncos, of course, playing in London. Technically a Jets home game, although let's be honest, it's really a neutral site game. Broncos 7-point favorites. If you watch the Jets this season, that might seem low to you, but you want to get in on the action game, FanDuel is the place to do it. All right, so what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Again, it's FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app. Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm John, the host of Locked On Jets, alongside Sayer, the co-host of Locked On Broncos, getting you ready for Week 6 action. Jets looking for their first win against the Denver Broncos, a team coming off a huge win over the Philadelphia Eagles. Sayer, give me a key to victory for the Denver Broncos in this one.
Yeah, I think the Broncos can win this game if they get to their season average in rushing yards per game, which is 140 roughly. So if you get to 140 in the rushing department, I think the Broncos can win this game. Just when the Broncos are running the ball well, that feeds into everything that they do offensively. Last year, they did not have much of a running game at all, so they were reliant heavily on Bo Nix and the passing attack, especially the quick passing game, to kind of create those chunk plays on early downs. And now with J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey coming on a couple of games this season, you've got a pair of players out there in the backfield that can really help you get things going offensively and get into favorable down and distance situations on second and third down. And that's where the Broncos have struggled the most. When they're not running the ball well, they're getting into third and long situations. Against the Chargers, they were average a 3rd and 11 plus. I mean, it was rough out there for them in that particular game. So that early down success with the running game and sustaining it throughout the game, it allows you to get play action for Bo Nix. It allows you to, manipulate with misdirection, run pass options, which we've seen a few more of those this season for the Broncos. So I think everything is hinging on them hitting their season average of 140 rushing yards per game. And I think if they do that, I think they can win this game.
All right. My first key for the Jets is that in their game script, they have to design easy completions for Justin Fields to get him into the flow of the game early. Fields has started 4 of the 5 games for the Jets. He missed the Week 3 game against Tampa Bay with a concussion. I would say that in his 4 starts, there's been one where he was excellent throwing the football against Pittsburgh, one where he was pretty decent against Miami, and 2 games where it was ugly. And I think last week against Dallas was ugly. The Cowboys entered that game with a defense that was on a historically bad pace. They were averaging 8.5 net yards per attempt. So that includes that includes yards you take away from sacks. Entering that game, they were averaging 8.5 net yards per attempt. Jets had 43 net passing yards in the entire first half. Fields' stat line for the game looks respectable, but there was a lot of stat padding against prevent defenses. Look, the Jets are going to be a run-first team, particularly with Fields at quarterback, but they have to get something out of their passing game. And there have been 2 of the 4 field starts where they haven't. And there's only so much you could do in the first couple of series, but I think what the Jets want to do is make sure Fields gets in the flow of the game, get him feeling comfortable, try and design some easy completions for him so he can at least start to build some confidence at the start of this game. Sayer, give me another key.
Yeah, I think what you just mentioned is critical because the Broncos have given up a lot of big plays through the air this season, whether it's been breakdowns in coverage, somebody not covering a running back, whether it's been penalties deep downfield, or whether it's just been perfectly placed ball on a deep pass that Broncos, even if they had perfect coverage, they can't do anything about it. They got burned by that a number of times against the Colts, against the Chargers. And then obviously this past weekend against the Eagles, I mean, like a 3rd and 17 situation, you're giving up a 50-yard passing play to Devontae Smith because you decided to play press coverage instead of off-man coverage. So I think that's an area that we will see the Jets try to attack. And one of the keys for the Broncos is not giving up big plays, not allowing the Jets to flip the field and controlling field position, because that's something that you want to bury this team deep. I mean, even if Justin Fields is getting into a rhythm of a game, this Broncos defense believes that they can bend and not break. They're one of the best red zone defenses in the NFL. So if they create longer fields, no pun intended, they are believing that they can absolutely, okay, even if we give up a chunk here and there, we can kind of limit the amount of points that they're going to score because we'll tighten up in the red zone. It's allowing those big plays and kind of allowing teams like the Jets or anybody else to reset once they get inside the 40, inside the 30, to have sort of a new set of downs and momentum on their side. That's where the Broncos have really struggled this season defensively.
My second key for the Jets is getting Justin Fields more involved in the run game. Since week 1, Fields has not had more than 7 rushing attempts in the game. And there are 2 elements to this. So your number one, I think, is building design runs for Fields. Jets have been pretty effective running zone read concepts with Fields at quarterback. They just haven't really run a whole lot of them. But I think Fields also needs to be more willing to scramble on drop back passes. Fields is like a very odd mobile quarterback because, Sayer, like a lot of times, like you'll see a quarterback who's a running quarterback and they just try and run too frequently. It's like they take off at the first sign that like their first read isn't open. If anything, Fields is a little too hesitant to use his legs. He's a guy who has the ability to rip off a 15, 20-yard run. And Fields is at his best when he's running, both in terms of designed runs and scrambles. This is a Jets offense that has to be run first. And again, this is not college football where you're running the wishbone or the triple option. You have to be able to throw the ball. But this is a Jets team that's going to lean on the run more frequently than most of the league. And that involves the quarterback being a key component in the run game. So I think the Jets need to make it a focus to get Fields more involved in the run. Do you have a third key for us?
Yeah, I think really for the Broncos in this game, and it stems from what we've talked about earlier as well, but you don't want to be the team that is the streak ender for the Jets, especially when it comes to their not having forced any turnovers defensively. You don't want to be the team that not only gets their first takeaway of the season, but maybe multiple. Like, you can't have that happen in a game like this where you've taken care of the ball 2 straight games now. You had some trouble with that against the Chargers, against the, earlier in the season, you've had some trouble with giveaways. So make sure you're taking care of the football in a game like this. And if you're Bo Nix, that means staying with who you are, but also not being reckless, right? You don't need to be reckless in a game like this. You need to trust the process over the course of 4 quarters. The Broncos need to make sure that they are getting those big chunks, like we mentioned on early down, so they can avoid having to press on the 3rd and long situations and get themselves into tough situations where they may give the ball away to this Jets defense.
Well, great minds think alike. My third key for the Jets is they got to force a turnover, at least one. It's unbelievable that this team's gone 5 weeks without forcing a turnover. And look, there's been some bad luck. I mean, if you've watched other teams play offense, when they fumble the ball, it's like there's always three of their guys around it and no Jets. So, I mean, the Jets have had some really bad fumble luck. But this has been a defense that has not taken advantage of opportunities. In week one, there were 2 interceptions dropped, one by Michael Carter II, one by Brandon Stevens off Aaron Rodgers. And if either one of those interceptions is made, the Jets probably win that game, and the Jets are not entering this game as the only winless team in the NFL. I hate to bring it down to something as generic as somebody's got to make a play, but somebody's got to make a play for the Jets on defense, whether it's Jermaine Johnson getting to Bo Nix and creating a strip sack, whether it's somebody getting the ball out and hopefully you have better fumble luck, whether it's a corner jumping a route. Somebody's got to make a play. And part of this is that the Jets are the less talented of these 2 teams. And when you're the undermanned team, you need big plays to win the game. Sayer, I'm going to close out by asking for a prediction. What do you think the Broncos need to do to win this game? If the Broncos win, what will happen?
Yeah, I think if the Broncos win this game, what's going to happen is that they dominated on the ground and they didn't turn the ball over, right? That's the identity of this team is playing clean football, that they need to be that way. They need to limit penalties. They had 12 penalties against the Philadelphia Eagles and still managed to find a way to win. I think it was 10 or 12, one of the two. Either way, egregious. They've had way too many penalties this season, so they've got to limit those penalties while still being physical and winning the line of scrimmage. That's where this team struggles, is that they get beat at the line of scrimmage. They struggle against good teams. They struggle against anybody. So that's where I think the Jets may have an opportunity, is with that injury to the left guard position, is can you establish early on that you're not going to allow the Broncos to dictate the pace of this game with the running game. That's where the Broncos have to be effective right away to start this game.
And my prediction is that if the Jets win this game, it's going to be a combination of this team finally putting together a good game. I think the Jets need to be at their best, and the Broncos need to make mistakes. And that might be a combination of, the long London trip playing a factor. It may be Broncos. It may be that this is actually a trap game, but I think we both agree that if these 2 teams both play their A game, Broncos are going to win. Jets need the Broncos to be a little bit off, and the Jets need to play their best game. And I think that's really the only path to victory for the New York Jets in this one. Well, Sayer, as always, great to chat with you. Feel like we do this every year, so maybe we'll do it again next year.
Right.
All right, well, good luck the rest of the way. I hope it's a good game. Hopefully no injuries on Sunday. Jets fans, I am John Butchko, the host of Locked On Jets. Broncos fans, he is Sayer Bedinger, the co-host of Locked On Broncos. Here at the Locked On Podcast Network, our motto is your team every day. So we'll be back tomorrow, Locked On Jets, Locked On Broncos, to get you ready for Week 6 action in London. Sayer and I will chat with you then.